So this is being. This is life. This. Everything that's happening now is life, is being. It's all there is. Being has no function, has no intention, has no purpose. It contains all function and all purpose. So words, we're going to discuss, maybe we'll discuss things today. All the words and all the concepts are functions. They all have a subject and object. They all pertain to something. They all are about something happening. In being and life, there's nothing happening. There's no purpose, there's no meaning behind it. It's just simply everything. It's so radically simple that even the word is, this is being, doesn't say what it is. Because if you say is, you automatically create is not. So this is and is not. Being is and is not. Life is and is not. The problem is that there's a contraction which feels is, I am. And that makes everything else is, and is not available anymore, is no longer, everything becomes is, it becomes real, and the reality that it's also not is lost. So when you have an is, and you have I am, you have I have purpose, this has meaning and purpose, this is going somewhere, and I'm making it happen, because I have that, I am that. Completely misses the reality that being is all there is. Being is and is not. Is not is nothing, but is not nothing isn't nothing to what the brain would think of nothing as a black hole with nothing in it. It's just nothing, which is everything. It's inconceivable, completely beyond conception. Functionless.
Are you speaking from that, it's not that point or a place or something, are you speaking from there now? Could you say that?
Not really, because if you say I'm speaking from here and now, that gives a position to something that's not happening. But it's obvious that that's what's happening.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have to say you. What
yeah, no, it's fine. And I have to say that there is no you.
That's the problem of language. Okay.
You're speaking from there now too. That question comes from that as well.
I know.
Yeah.
But that doesn't solve my problems so far.
No, nothing does.
It seems, to me it seems like that.
Yeah.
That's why
just to go on further, the problem is being, acting like a problem, appearing as a problem.
Yeah. The problem is only what you see in being.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that being a problem is also being a problem. It doesn't matter. Being is everything. Being appears as time. Being appears as identification. Being appears as a problem. Being appears as suffering. Being appears as anger, as joy.
Okay, and that construction you spoke about then, interpret?
Is also being. Appearing as a contraction that it does all the other stuff.
And that creates a feeling of a problem.
But the feeling of a problem is also being.
Yeah, okay.
Being appears as nothing.
being doesn't appear as nothing, being is nothing.
See, my problem is that I can't always say that it is like that. My problem is that I seem to know intellectually, I seem to know all that.
Yeah, it's undeniable,
but
isn't it?
still,
yeah.
I'm sitting here and saying my problem is.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the point where I'm stuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think I have the same problem.
And every effort I make to solve it increases it.
Yeah.
That's what I'm feeling. And that's kind of a dilemma, you know.
Every action from the contraction is a confirmation that it's not being.
Yeah.
That is it?
A confirmation, a Bestätigung,
Yeah.
that it's not it. That it wants to change something.
Yeah.
It's the non-recognition that this is
doesn't
everything.
like what is, wants something
But you know,
else.
there's a reality that there really is a contraction. There really is. And on top of that contraction, there's an I, or sort of a sense of a center there. That's just the way it is. That really happens. Well, it really appears to happen.
What happens? What really happens?
Nothing.
Nothing.
This.
What do you mean by this center?
Center, an I. A center. So a center is, I'm here and everything else is out there and everything is happening to me. Yeah. So there's something in here. Whereas in reality there's nothing in here. There's space. Just like this. There's no inner and outer, it's all space. It's all appearance. What happens is I have an I in here, and then this seems like it's solid and it's real. Everything seems like it's real, only real, instead of is and is not. And that's because of a center here. The center here then sees a center there, and a center there, and a center there. It's the same thing. It happens at the same time. It's the same thing. So I'd like to differentiate a couple of things, because there's the ability to realize there's no me. There never was one. Everything's impersonal. But I realize that. So there's still a duality going on. There's also the ability to realize that there's no story and everything's empty. But I realize that. There's the actual stopping of the story is when the contraction dissipates. And the idea surrounding that contraction sees itself as having a position in a place.
What do you mean?
And what's interesting, I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Just one. Each one of these things that happen, it always seems like you couldn't imagine how it could go on. That must be it. I realize nothing. How could anything else happen if there's only nothing? Well, what I've heard is that first off, I wouldn't doubt what happened. So if you have a glimpse of reality, of joy, although I don't see reality as pure joy, or any of those things. I don't
but
see
it felt like that.
Yeah. A glimpse of reality is extremely threatening to the contraction. Although there were all these realizations, and there's not a progression. I'm not trying to express a progression. I'm just explaining what happened here. There's not a progression. Even though I had realized that there's no me and there's no center, there never was one. When the center disappeared, it's still freaky. Because it's completely unexpected. Well, all I can say is what apparently happened here. And there were different realizations, and what I'm trying to share is there can be this I that has all these realizations, seems very special. I realize there's nobody and there never was. And that has nothing to do with the reality of the contraction disappearing.
Yeah, because then it is in me that
I realize, totally.
Me realize.
Yeah.
Not there's no I.
Yeah. There's no me.
Yes, there's no me. Yeah. Who constructed the center?
Nobody.
Because it was there.
What's that?
Because it is actually not there.
It appears to be.
It appears to be. There is no.
Nothing's real.
Yeah.
Would you describe the realization as more clarity afterwards, or how would you see the world differently? Or experience it differently?
When what?
After this realization, is it about more clarity or a different perception?
Are we talking about when the contraction disappears?
Yeah, and afterwards.
Okay, so when the contraction disappears, it's realized that everything is empty. And it's not realized, it's recognized. It's not perceived. Because it makes it sound like I'm sitting here looking over there and I see an emptiness there. But what it is there's nothing projecting or putting anything into there. So there's nothing happening. So there's an end to that happening. There's an end of happening.
But obviously there's still feelings or some thoughts. Isn't that something happening?
Well, apparently everything's happening. If there wasn't something apparently happening or apparent time, these words wouldn't make sense. To make sense of a sentence, you need to put two moments together, or else you couldn't make sense of a sentence. So apparent time is still happening. There's nothing put into it as far as it having meaning or purpose. There's no need for it to be anything else than what it is. The contraction is a need to make everything fit into its concepts and ideas of what life's about, purpose and meaning.
There's no fear, there's no anger.
Of course there's fear and anger. There's everything. It's so hard to describe it in a way.
But
it happens.
If no one is there, who should feel?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because I always thought there was supposed to be no fear. Because who's going to die? And the funny thing is there's no fear of death. So there's a recognition that this is death. This is death. Death doesn't change anything. Because nothing's dependent on what is or what's happening. So death is just what is, or being. Right? So why is there fear? I don't know. Maybe the brain holds certain programs and runs those programs of what this brain has experienced. I don't know. Because there's another experience, a realization, where I detach from everything, where I stop thinking, and I have the sense of being untouchable. And I think that's where a lot of these gurus these days are talking from. You know, they stop thinking, they're completely detached from everything. Anything can happen to them, and it doesn't affect them in a sense. They're completely detached. I think it's actually a psychological situation of disassociation. I think that's what who am I creates, is a sense of disassociation. And in that state, what the I can do there is I can realize death. So I can go beyond death. So in a detached state, I can become so detached from the experience of everything that I can feel like I am beyond death. And in that state, there's no fear. But I think that's because there's a detachment from everything. And that's not what I'm talking about now.
So you would say that one of these gurus has still, although he claims or even believes something else, there must still be some kind of that construction to which this psychological effect happens?
Well, wherever the message is coming from, all that can be said is what's been seen there, or what's known there, or what's not known there. I do that known because we're talking about unknowing. In the end, it's only unknowing is what this is. This is unknowing. So if that message comes out and it talks about a person who can do something to get somewhere, then there must be something there that thinks that the person is real and it can do something to get somewhere. Does that make sense?
No.
No. So you asked about a psychological effect of things.
Yeah.
Well, I guess all I can say is whoever's giving the message, they're coming from wherever they're coming from.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And here, it doesn't seem like anything is excluded. Here it seems like everything is included. It doesn't, freedom doesn't have a particular image, a particular way of being.
So what's your intention to make these gatherings?
There's no intention. Being has no intention. I mean, what we're talking about is an identification, a contraction in the body that creates the appearance of time, that it creates the appearance of a life, which is my life, that has meaning and purpose, and that I need to use my free will and choice to make it happen. That can look like, you know, a lot of people just live their life, never think about things like this. One thing it does is when there's a contraction here, there's a subtle discontent with existence, with the life, because it doesn't actually ever work in a way. Some people get enough that they don't feel that discontent, or not that sensitive. So if they get a little bit of sensitivity, then they start to look for a solution to that. Drugs and alcohol are a good way to do it. Religion is a good way to do that, you know, to sort of project it out there. And if you go further and further, if you get really deep into it, you realize religion and things like that don't work. I think that's why this message is becoming more popular, because it's found therapy and other things, religions aren't really working. And then you start looking for something else. Another, I don't know what I'm answering, I don't know what the question is.
So before you, in the story of the person that apparently is sitting here,
Yeah.
before that realization came, what was your relationship to things like that, to fear and anger? Did you
So realizations are limited.
Was there enough? Would you say that there was enough suffering to come to that realization, or something like that?
No. The realizations, as I was talking about before, are for me limited. What the final thing is no center, or the loss of a center, the loss of a contraction position that says I'm here and you're there, that says I'm real and therefore you're real, and that what's happening is real. There's a loss of that. The realizations, what I was trying to say is that I just think it's fascinating that the I can have all these realizations and things it knows so much, and for it to be just completely irrelevant in light of the reality of there being no one, there being just space. An unbelievable reality of there just being space. There's only space. So there's nothing real here. There's nothing real there. It's all just what it is. It all just appears as it is. And because that's the last step, although there were no steps prior to that led up to that last step, there are no steps that lead up to that, because that contraction does anything it does, and everything it does is only in support of itself, no matter what it thinks it's doing. So all the meditation and all the rice eating and all the suffering and all the other stuff that it thinks it's doing to get rid of itself, it's just confirming its own existence. And it has no capability of doing anything else.
So what is doing that? Grace, or how would you call that? You can't do something to achieve it.
Well, the thing is this, and that's where we get to a very interesting point, is that it doesn't need to be achieved because it's already what is. The identity is...
If this contraction doesn't realize that it is, but it is also not because I don't know it.
This contraction, listen please, this contraction never realizes it. It never realizes it. It can't realize it because in the end, it never happened. What happens is something that never happened stops appearing to happen.
But I think the question is what makes it stop appearing to happen.
But that would, see, the question confirms that it had a reality.
Yeah.
And it's really funny because it never had a reality. Just like a glimpse. And if you've ever had those glimpses you had, you can't remember a glimpse. The memory of a glimpse has no reality. The glimpse is now. It's this. That's the glimpse. Because what you jump into is infinity. And everything turns inside out. All there is infinity. All there is what is. All there is being.